Hi, good morning, class. Today we're presenting on the Chapter 12, Methods of Data Management and Field Research. This chapter reviews the practical issues surrounding data collections while we document our work away from home in the field, and collaborate on research teams. The chapter offers tools for addressing practical issues. My name is Tinmama, and this is my colleague Thomas. Instead of just summarizing this chapter, we select topics from the chapter that relate to us and are useful during our field research abroad. So I personally went to the Thai-Burma border and had a field research experience in 2008, and I applied some of the methods that I will be describing as below. Field testing is important as a trial in order to be prepared for our actual field research activity. So make sure that your equipment and resources are working fine, and that you and your teams are familiar with your own props and know how to operate them properly. Also, prepare note-taking skills. So think of the sample questions that you may want to research. And I went to the border with the open mind and trust myself that I came up with questions as I faced a situation or specific event. Obviously, it was a shock for me, and most of us as student researchers would have this kind of mindset. And I suggest that you don't, and instead you structure your research beforehand. If you are new to the practical field research and your research question is new and never been asked before, then Jackie mentions this method. So pilot your survey questionnaires with a selected group from the populations who are able to give you feedback on the survey instruments and how it might be improved from the respondent perspectives. This will help you think of more relevant questions about your research topics and make you aware of how the questions can be understood and interpreted differently from your participants. First impression is also very important as a foundation piece of trust, and it is a tool for all researchers. So often it is a shock for subject participants when the researcher is a young woman. So I personally experienced this myself, and it is very true in the real practical world. So being an Asian young woman researching in the field of male-dominated culture in Thailand, you can imagine it was very challenging. So gaining credibility with the subject participants and facilitator is important for young women and other researchers whose identity may seem out of place in their particular research field. So presenting yourself as a professional is a key. For women graduate students interviewing officials and observing elite forums, Jackie recommended that, this is just a suggestion, a navy blue suit as a keeping way of focusing on your question and research instead of your personality. And that is very true as well. Making impression is all about being accountable and reliable for your actions, such as dress in the way that is expected in that society that you're in, be on time to show your respect to your participants' time, and be prepared with your data for your research interview, and so on. Remember to present yourself as a professional at all times as a researcher. Also, permission and consent. For ethical and logical reasons, most methods of data generation require you to get permissions, and this applies to interviews, focus groups, and survey work. So depending on the work that you do, you may need many kinds of permissions from your subject participants. So getting permission is building a relationship of trust. It is a power equality between the researcher and your participants. It is also an opportunity to explain to the respondent that they have the authority to decline what they want to tell you and what they don't. This is a problematic in the real practical research field if you want to expose the real issues in your research place. So in order to get facts, you can't afford not to get permissions. Therefore, you may just need to go ahead and film and report the fact that is more relevant to your research topic. This leads me to conclude with the sensitivity to the context. So researchers need to pay attention to the context. Researchers may, our interview subject participants and facilitators may be put at risk as a result of our research. So by virtue of their political views, activists are often at risk. So be mindful of the cultural appropriateness and be sensitive to the context. This means that you may need to change the way you do your work, your methods, and the timing of your research as well. I use 4 of the methodology in order because that was my personal experience and the way I prepared my field research in Thailand. It is a good start. It's the basic steps. So please Be mindful of your publishing of your research and avoid putting your subject participants at risk. It is a good idea to always ask your participants what kind of hardship or danger will you put them if you are going to declare their information, and so they can let you know. In that way, that will help you prevent their danger in the field. I pass it on to my colleague, Thomas.
Thank you. As Tinmama said, we're trying to put our personal experience within the chapter. And in the chapter, we are introduced to the concept of social networks, which are important in order to understand the social norms if you as a researcher are going to another country. And although I haven't done research like in Tinmama's example, I'm an exchange student nonetheless here in New Zealand, which means that for me to understand social norms in New Zealand, I should avoid hanging out with other exchange students, which I did. So basically, I had to make an effort in order to understand the social norms in the country I'm in. And some of the ways you could do that for me was to join some of the clubs here at the university. But if you as a researcher are going out, one of the options you can do is, as mentioned in the book, try to invite other researchers to like a dinner party, formal dinner party, where you can discuss your work and discuss their views of the social norms in the country. Apart from the fact that you might gain new friends and you might gain new people you can rely upon, they will have a chance to look upon your work and maybe give you a new insight and critique to what you're doing, which will or even open up the door for new subject participants which you can interview. And in terms of interviewing, in the chapter we're introduced to various techniques. And as Tinmama said, the first impression is one of the most important impressions you will ever make. And the same thing goes with an interview. It's important to make a good impression upon the subject participant. And one of the key ways to do that is basically just by being prepared. If you've done your research about the subject participant you're interviewing, so you know the background, where they're from, you might be able to answer more in-depth questions that might give you an added knowledge. Another point is that by being prepared, your signal, you're gaining the trust of the subject participant, and by building the trust between you and whoever you're interviewing, you have a better chance of gaining valuable information in the interview. And building trust is not very difficult. It's basically just about respecting the subject participant. And respect for the subject participant is very easy. A simple matter as asking whether or not you're allowed to record the interview will go a long way in showing that you respect their decision and that you trust in their judgment. And once you're doing the interview, you have the option of asking various nuances of the same questions, which might lead to added insights. Because if interviewer is the subject participant is feeling very strongly about a certain subject, slightly rephrasing the question will allow them to give a more clear and concise answer to the same questions you just asked. And that might actually help you in terms of more added insight, plus it will help them convey their meaning more clear, and as such you'll actually be building trust towards them. If you're doing a questionnaire, you have to avoid using biased words. By certain words like feminism might ring a bell that will give a completely obscure answer in complete another, it'll give you an answer you're not looking for. It might cloud the actual answer you're seeking towards the person. Which also relates back to if you're doing research in another country, if you're not 100% able to speak, if you're not able to speak the language freely and uninhibited, you might be needing a translator. And as such, it might affect the way you're doing the interview, because if you have a translator sitting next to you, the flow and the dynamic and the building of the trust in an interview might be damaged, because you have to wait for the interviewer to ask your question and then translate the answer back. But it also has some added benefits, because you'll have another partner, you have somebody to spar with after the interview who might say, well, this is the way I understood the meaning of whatever the subject participant was talking about. Basically, within this chapter 12 in Agony and True, we are being introduced to various tools that will help us as researchers within the field, whether or not you're doing it abroad or just at home. We have been introduced to a wide variety of tools, and the key thing is that once we start researching, we'll know which tools to use, and we'll hone those skills, and that will make us better researchers. Thank you.